In a world where shining armor and noble charges steal the glory, the true heart of medieval warfare beat in shadows few ever saw. Before you lies a tale not of crowned victors, but of forgotten hands who toiled beneath walls, bled beside siege engines, and braved every deadly breath so that banners might rise in morning light. These were the unseen warriors whose courage never made it into songs, the men who fought not for praise, but for survival, for duty, and for the fragile hope of returning home. Their sacrifices forged victories no knight could claim alone. Hidden beneath the roar of battle, they labored in mud, smoke, fear, and grief, ghosts of medieval destiny. If you believe real history lies not in shining swords, but in the souls that held the line in silence, tap like, smash subscribe, and join us as we uncover the forgotten lifeblood of medieval warfare. The common folk imagine medieval warfare as a glorious clash, the thunder of hooves, the gleam of helmets, the echo of trumpets across green fields. They dream of lance, armor, and noble valor shining beneath banners fluttering against heaven's breath. Yet truth bears no such polish. The real medieval battlefield was carved from sweat and dread, carried on the backs of the unseen, and stained with the memories of those who never found their names whispered in reverence. In every siege, every march, every bloody standoff by walls of stone, it was not only knights who decided fate, but 1,000 others, men who labored unseen, dying first and dying hardest, without hope of glory. You will not find their deeds carved upon shields or remembered in ancient chronicles, but without them, no lord's triumph would have lasted more than a single heartbeat. The Sappers were among the most haunted of these forgotten heroes, creeping beneath towering castle walls with pick and shovel clutched tight. They stepped into darkness without promise of air or salvation, carving narrow tunnels like worms gnawing through the earth. Behind them stretched suffocating passageways, propped by timber as fragile as hope, ready to collapse with even the faintest tremble of misplaced earth. The enemy above knew their presence by the distant echo of iron against stone, and so dug counter, tunnels with equal desperation. Sappers labored in maddening silence, listening for a scrape that might mean a rival's pick or a sudden ambush that would rip into them in the pitch-black gloom. Without the thunder of explosive powder to hasten their work, they relied on fire itself. They deliberately ignited wooden beams beneath the fortifications set to collapse. The timing had to be perfect, too soon, and the tunnel might fall without toppling the wall. Too late, and flames might choke them long before success. The terror of being buried alive, of gasping for breath as earth swallowed every ray of light, lurked in their hearts with every stroke of the shovel. Above their heads, the ladder carriers braved open fields in frenzied rushes to reach the foot of enemy ramparts. Armor weighed them down, yet offered little safety against the whistling rain of death from above. Arrows, bolts, rocks, and boiling oil. These men sprinted while barely able to lift the heavy ladders needed to storm enemy walls. They moved with wild faith, every footstep stomping closer to a destiny likely carved by pain. Many collapsed just yards from their destination, arrows jutting from their necks, their sacrifices enabling those behind them to step forward just a little further. Yet they kept running again and again, not because they dreamed of reward, but because someone had to carry that ladder, someone had to place it against the wall, no matter the price. Their jobs were not mere orders, but grim necessities of medieval warfare, and they understood this with terrifying clarity. Standing just behind these human waves were the Pavise bearers, soldiers whose sole purpose was to hold vast wooden shields upright so that crossbowmen might reload safely. Their arms ached under the weight of enormous, bone-hard Pavises, etched with faded symbols barely visible beneath splinters and newly embedded arrows. They could neither strike nor run. Their task was to stand. To endure, they became living walls, absorbing shafts meant to kill the men behind them, Bones cracked beneath the force of impacts, and panic threatened to break their knees, but they held because collapse meant doom for countless comrades. Some urban legends whispered that Pavise bearers were paid extra for this deadly burden, not for bravery, but because they were essential. Without them, the army's line of fire would crumble, and charges would falter long before they reached the walls. Still, their names dissolved in history like dust in sunlight. Even more cursed were the standard bearers, the very symbols of unity and morale. When these men stepped onto the battlefield, they surrendered all hope of personal defense. Both hands wrapped around the long pole bearing their lord's banner, they could wield neither shield nor weapon freely. They were instructed, do not waver, do not lower the flag, stand upon your feet as long as breath remains. If you stumble, rise. If you bleed, grip the pole tighter. If you are dying, ensure the banner remains upright until another may seize it. The enemy understood that a fallen standard broke morale more surely than 1,000 swords. And so archers found their mark there first. A banner swaying above wreathed its bearer in doom, yet still these soldiers took their position with silent determination. Every stitch of fabric flapping above was stitched again by belief and fear. The colors not of cloth, but of duty, lineage, and heart. Behind the lines, the wagon guards patrol lonely paths beside the main encampment. They did not partake in glorious assaults, yet without their vigilance, medieval armies would starve, thirst, and falter before ever clashing with the enemy. These men trudged beside rumbling wooden wagons full of grain, meat, arrows, rope, tar, and wine, forever wary of sudden ambushes from raiders, mercenaries, or desperate villagers recruited by enemy gold. They were the artery that fed the war. Bandits did not fight fair. They struck from brush or ravines, arrows aimed at mule and driver alike. Wagon guards knew their role was often fatal, but to lose even one convoy meant doom. Siege lines depended entirely upon supply, and a single cart of lost arrows could cost hundreds of lives at the walls. Thus they fought quietly, without a claim, winning victories by protecting barley and timber rather than by shedding blood on the battlefield. Another hidden battlefield flourished in the darkness: night raids. Scouts and infiltrators moved like shadows, creeping across hostile terrain, stealing into enemy camps to slash ropes, pour water into powder, cut harnesses, or loosen bolts in siege engines. They hurled clay jars filled with burning pitch over palisades, turning peaceful evenings into blazing nightmares. They were the embodiment of nerve, for among the silent tents of the enemy every misstep meant death, an arrow to the spine, a spear through the ribs, or perhaps worse, interrogation. Their task was to create chaos, sow fear, and force the enemy to exhaust themselves on sleepless nights. Yet even if they returned alive, their deeds were forgotten come morning. No trumpet saluted their stealth. They vanished back into the ranks as if they had never left. Their victories were measured not in triumph, but in the brief panic of the enemy, the brief advantage purchased by disruption. Daylight offered no respite for other support soldiers. Men spent endless hours retrieving spent arrows and bolts from the very fields where death still lingered. With heads bowed, they scoured grass and mud for any shaft still intact. Wooden stockpiles meant survival. Medieval arrows were precious, hand-carved, fletched, and balanced with painstaking care. If the enemy's rain of missiles did not pause, then these collectors crawled under danger. More than one was struck while clutching arrows that had already tasted blood. Yet every recovered bolt meant another chance for their comrades to kill. Thus did they creep amid carnage, gathering symbols of death as tools of survival. No songs praised arrow fetchers. Yet by their quiet perseverance, they kept shooters stocked in some of the most harrowing campaigns of medieval history. War unfolded not merely upon the surface, but within minds as well. the psychological toll was relentless. Night sentinels guarding camps dared not close their eyes, for sleep was enemy to all. They trembled beneath star-filled skies, straining to glimpse silhouettes in distant shadows. One moment of fatigue, one nod of the head, and an infiltrator could slip inside to slit throats and light fires. Sleep itself became a feared foe. Their hearts pulsed fast even when stillness reigned. Fear brewed stronger than ale. Likewise, scouts sent far from the camp gripped their blades not for attack, but for the dreadful moment they might be discovered. If captured, they faced ghastly torments, broken limbs, gouged eyes, or torture to force them to reveal positions of their comrades. And should they reveal anything, even against their will, they believed themselves cursed, worthy of eternal shame. Thus they stepped forward again and again, balancing survival, terror, and loyalty upon every breath. Siege engineers manned trebuchets, ballistae, mangonels, and battering rams, majestic engines of war that rattled bone and shook earth upon launch. Yet the men who operated them stood inches away from disaster. Ropes snapped without warning, beams buckled under pressure, pins failed with explosive force, hurling deadly shards faster than arrows. Yet someone had to load, crank, and haul. With calloused hands and battered backs, they moved heavy stones, iron bolts, and massive timber frames in perfect synchronization. Sweat poured from their brows, greasing their palms applied to winding levers. They focused not on applause, but on precision. Strike the wall here, weaken the gate there. One misfire could not only fail to crack stone, but kill the crew, yet they persisted. For every castle wall that fell, countless men had strained to break it, and many died before it finally tumbled, unrecognized in the echoes of their own triumph. As battles dragged on, disease and exhaustion struck with merciless timing. The men filling ditches to allow siege engines forward did so while standing knee, deep in mud, filth, and often blood. They shoveled earth endlessly, pressing forward yard by yard, while defenders rained arrows, rocks, and boiling liquids upon them. Many lost fingers to infection, or lungs to smoke inhalation, or eyes to scorching oil. Yet they stepped forward again, day after day, for without flat ground and filled moats, siege towers could not approach, and rams could not strike. Their movements were not grand charges, but grueling ordeals, lifting buckets, dumping sand, hauling boulders. Medieval warfare rewarded stubborn persistence as much as strength, and these laborers were the stubborn flame of persistence itself. Truly, those forgotten by fame were the essence of medieval warfare. Remove the noble knight, and another might replace him. But remove the sapper undermining the walls, the messenger relaying desperate orders under fire, or the supply wagon warden protecting a handful of barley, and whole armies would crumble to ruin. The fate of empires rested upon these invisible shoulders. They did not dream of honor, of songs, of glory. They dreamed of seeing dawn once more, of feeling the warmth of their hearth again, of hearing a child's laugh instead of the howling wind atop a siege rampart. No chronicler etched their stories in gold. Rarely were their names even recorded, but the structures of victory were built upon their backs. Every banner hoisted, every gate breached, every town captured was a monument to their sacrifice, though history turned its gaze elsewhere. What makes their story so heart-wrenching yet powerful is precisely this. They accepted invisibility. They entered the mud, the darkness, the carnage, knowing none would ever shout their names or carve their deeds into stone. But in secret, they remained the beating heart of medieval warfare, the unbreakable spine of every siege. Through terror, exhaustion, brutality, and despair, they held the line so that others might cross. They were the silent, unyielding force that turned chaos into victory, that gave shape to the destiny of realms, and that proved true courage is not found in a shining helm, but in unseen hands that never stopped grasping for hope. And so, dear traveller of time, as you leave this tale of medieval warfare, remember not only the shining knight and his polished sword, but the unseen souls who stood in dust, in darkness, and in death's shadow, so others could march toward tomorrow. Their sacrifice whispered through the centuries forms the true backbone of history, the untold heartbeat behind every victory. If this journey into forgotten valor stirred your spirit, do not let their story fade again. Share this memory, like this tribute, subscribe to unlock more hidden medieval legacy, and let us keep alive the names that were never spoken aloud. Until our next tale, hold fast to the truth. True courage is quiet, unseen, and everlasting. Farewell, brave soul. May your heart remember what the ages forgot.